In the profound architecture of our biological existence, we must venture deeper into the synaptic gaps where the most quiet yet most powerful revolutions occur. To truly grasp why the impossible experiment is a testament to the human spirit, we must analyze the biochemical orchestration of the winner effect. When a system, be it a single neuron or a complex human personality, experiences a breakthrough, the brain undergoes a radical reconfiguration of its androgen receptors. This isn't just a psychological boost. It is a structural renovation. The brain begins to prioritize the pathways of agency over the pathways of passivity. Imagine your consciousness as a high-frequency signal navigating a dense forest of static. This static is composed of evolutionary baggage, the fear of social rejection, the fear of physical depletion, and the ancient reptilian instinct to remain in a state of low-energy homeostasis. To bypass this static, the mind must engage in a process of neural foraging. We are constantly searching for new patterns of meaning that justify the expenditure of our most precious resource, metabolic energy. The human brain, despite representing only 2% of our body weight, consumes 20% of our total energy. This is why the impossible is so often avoided by the brain. It is an expensive luxury. However, when we integrate the concept of cognitive reframing, we essentially change the price of that energy. We convince the system that the impossible task is actually a survival necessity. This leads us to the phenomenon of flow state, a neurological sweet spot where the prefrontal cortex, the seat of our self-consciousness and inner critic, temporarily shuts down. This transient hypofrontality allows the rest of the brain to function with a speed and fluidity that feels supernatural. In this state, the distortion of time is not a metaphor. It is a neurobiological reality. The brain's internal clock, governed by the basal ganglia and the cerebellum, shifts its processing frequency. This is where the impossible becomes the inevitable. We must also consider the role of bioelectromagnetism. Every thought is an electrical impulse, and every impulse creates a field. When we speak of vibes or energy, we are touching on the fringes of what biophysicists are now studying as the body's coherent light emissions or biophotons. While still in the frontier of science, the idea that our mental state can influence the cellular coherence of our bodies suggests that the impossible experiment is as much about physics as it is about psychology. If we view the human body as a quantum coherence system, then willpower is the force that prevents the system from decohering into chaos under pressure. Think of the placebo effect, perhaps the greatest impossible experiment ever conducted by nature. A person takes a sugar pill, believing it to be a powerful medicine, and their brain literally produces the endogenous opioids or dopamine required to heal the body. This is the brain faking it, until the biology makes it real. It proves that the mind holds the blueprints to the pharmacy of the body. If the mind can heal the body through belief, what can it do to the physical limits of strength, endurance, and creativity? We are looking at a future where neuroengineering and quantum cognition will allow us to purposefully trigger these states of peak performance. But we do not have to wait for future technology. The tools are already hardwired into your cortex. It begins with the micro-victory. By breaking the impossible into subatomic particles of action, we prevent the central governor from triggering the alarm. We sneak past the gates of our own resistance. Each small success sends a pulse of dopamine through the nucleus accumbens, reinforcing the behavior and slowly expanding the boundary of what the brain considers safe. This is how the impossible is colonized. Not by a single leap, but by 1,000 small steps that the brain didn't realize were dangerous. We are essentially hackers of our own biological code. When you feel the weight of the world, remember that your perception of that weight is a filtered, compressed version of reality. You are seeing a low-resolution version of your potential because the high-resolution version requires too much bandwidth. But you can upgrade that bandwidth. You can train your nervous system to handle higher voltages of stress, turning what was once a system failure into a system upgrade. This is the philosophy of anti-fragility. Not just surviving the stress, but requiring the stress to grow. Like a muscle that must be torn to become stronger, the mind must be pushed into the impossible zone to expand its definition of the possible. We are the only species on Earth capable of consciously deciding to undergo stress for a future, abstract goal. This capacity for delayed gratification is the ultimate cognitive superpower. It allows us to build civilizations, map the stars, and dive into the depths of our own DNA. The impossible experiment is not a historical event. It is the daily choice to act in spite of the governor's warnings. It is the decision to believe that the energy you need will be there once you start moving, rather than waiting for the energy to move. This activation energy is the hardest to generate, but once the reaction starts, it becomes self-sustaining. This is the nuclear fusion of the human spirit. To expand our understanding further, we must dissect the concept of the neural echo. Every time you resist an urge or push through a barrier, you leave a trace, a memory of competence that the brain uses as a reference for future challenges. In the domain of quantum biology, we consider the possibility of adaptive mutation driven by consciousness. While classical Darwinism suggests mutations are random, some theories propose that the intense physiological stress coupled with high-level cognitive intent could influence the epigenetic expression of our genes in real time. This is the ultimate mind-over-matter mechanism. You are not just a passenger in your body. You are the captain of its genetic expression. When we talk about the experiment that should have been impossible, we are talking about the moment a human being decides to transcend their biological programming. This is the intersection of neurobiology and existentialism. Jean-Paul Sartre spoke of radical freedom, the idea that we are condemned to be free. In a neurological sense, this freedom is the veto power of the prefrontal cortex over the limbic system. Your amygdala might be screaming danger, but your higher brain can say, proceed. This veto power is what separates us from every other creature on the planet. It is the basis of all human achievement. Furthermore, we must address the sociological mirror effect. Our individual breakthroughs don't just happen in a vacuum. They ripple through the collective consciousness. When one person achieves the impossible, it lowers the belief threshold for everyone else. This is why records in sports are broken in clusters. Once the mind of the collective knows it can be done, the biological systems of the individuals begin to align with that new reality. This is social neuroplasticity. We are literally wired to be inspired by one another. This inspiration isn't just a feeling. It's a recalibration of our internal governor. Let's consider the thermodynamics of thought. Entropy is the natural tendency of systems to move toward disorder. Without the active input of will, our habits, bodies, and minds decay into the easiest, lowest energy states. The impossible experiment is an act of biological defiance against entropy. It is the intentional application of cognitive work to create order out of the chaos of our impulses. This work requires a fuel source more potent than glucose. It requires vision. When you have a vision that is sufficiently large, your brain treats it as a primary survival need, effectively bypassing the normal exhaustion triggers. This is why historical figures endured conditions that should have killed them. Their narrative self was more important than their biological self. This brings us to the neurophilosophical core. Who is the you that is pushing the brain? If the brain is the machine, who is the operator? This is the hard problem of consciousness. Science can map the neurons, but it cannot find the will. Perhaps the will is an emergent property of the system when it reaches a certain level of complexity. A ghost in the machine that only appears when the machine is pushed to its limits. When you are in that moment of impossible effort, you are witnessing the birth of your own agency. You are moving from a reactive state to a creative state. This is the quantum leap of human evolution. We are the first generation of humans who can actively participate in our own neuroevolution. With every thought we choose, we are carving new canyons in the landscape of our minds. We are the architects of our own neural destiny. As we look at the intricate dance between our neurons and our will, we realize that the most complex technology in the known universe is sitting right behind your eyes, waiting for you to give it a command that contradicts its safety settings. You are an energy network capable of profound reconfiguration. The exhaustion you feel is often just a suggestion, a question posed by your brain, to see if you are truly committed to the path you've chosen. When you answer that question with action, the impossible becomes your new baseline. This is the beauty of the human condition. We are both the experiment and the scientist, the observer and the observed. We are the spark that ignites the mind. We must finally address the metacognitive loop. This is the ability to think about your own thinking. When you realize that your fatigue is a perceptual construct rather than a physiological limit, you have achieved a state of meta-human awareness. You can now observe your own suffering without being consumed by it. This is the secret of the Stoics, the monks, and the elite performers of history. They didn't have different brains. They had a different relationship with their brains. They viewed their internal signals as data, rather than orders. This distinction is the key to unlocking the remaining 40% of your potential. As we wrap up this extensive journey, realize that your life is a series of experiments. Some will fail, some will succeed, but the only truly impossible experiment is the one you never conduct. You are the pioneer of your own consciousness. You are the mind spark. If this exploration has resonated with you, I invite you to join our community of thinkers. Your engagement, every like, comment, and subscription acts as a signal to the algorithm that deep intellectual curiosity is still a vital part of our digital ecosystem. It helps us continue to produce these deep dives. What is one limit you once thought was impossible that you eventually moved past? Share your story in the comments below. Let's turn this section into a library of human resilience. Subscribe to MindSpark Science for more journeys into the intersections of neuroscience, quantum thought, and the philosophy of the self. Stay curious, stay analytical. And remember, your potential is only limited by the boundaries you refuse to test. Until next time, keep sparking. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to join our global community of science-driven minds. By subscribing, you support the long-form, deep-dive content that other creators shy away from. We are building a hub for the curious, a sanctuary for the analytical, and a spark for the innovative. Don't just watch, participate in the evolution of science communication. Subscribe now and let's unlock the impossible together.